Hi, welcome to the Mohua Show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur, and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's episode, we have with us Desmond Nazareth. Desmond is the principal founder and managing director of Agave India, and Conrad Braganza, who is the blender, manager of sales and marketing in Goa, and the in-house mixologist bartender for Agave India. Agave India is India's first and only rurally based greenfield small batch field to bottle and forest to bottle craft distillery. It uses Indian know-how and raw materials. Agave India makes international quality Indian agave spirits, Indian sugarcane spirits, and Mohua spirits, as well as orange and Mohua liqueur. Their products are sold under the master brand name DesmondJi or DJ. Their most recent products are DJ Mahua Spirit and DJ Mahua Liqueur, which was released in Goa in 2018. They are currently working on a plan to take the international quality Mahua products to the world. For those who don't know, Mahua is the Madhuka longifolia tropical tree which is found in the central northern Indian forest. The Mahua tree is a source of a wide range of products, including medicinal extracts, purees, vegetable butter, and more. But it is widely known for yielding liquor and intoxicating substances.
Thanks for inviting us to your show, Mohua. What inspired me to make Mohua liqueur is we were already into craft distilling agave spirits when I thought it would be interesting to take Mahua, which I had come across many years earlier, maybe a decade earlier, in a small town outside of Daman. And after tasting it and finding out a little bit about it, I thought it would be interesting to make it at a much higher quality level and see what happened. So in 2013, when we were already operating in the market with our agave spirits and our liqueurs, I thought we should give it a shot because Mahua has traditionally been a country alcohol, which means that it is made in an unregulated kind of way in villages around the forest belt of central India. And the states treated it as a country alcohol, which means it couldn't cross the state boundary. And there were different regulations for country alcohol that didn't quite work with a much more international approach that we had taken to making alcohol. So we started, Conrad and I got onto this project together. We started doing R&D in 2013. And we also applied for permissions to make Mohua at a non-country alcohol level, which ends up being an Indian IML category, which is Indian-made alcohol. And it took some years to get permissions to do that because people were resistant to the bureaucracy. But eventually we got through after 4 years, and then we started looking for sourcing Mohua flowers, found out a whole lot of regulations governing that in terms of movement between the central Indian states and the state in which we distill, which is Andhra Pradesh. So we took some time getting that worked out, then brought back the flowers over, made the spirit in our distillery, and then we're looking for a place to package and sell, which we thought would be ideal to happen in Goa, where we were already packaging and selling our other products. So yeah, I mean, it was a natural progression from taking what we were doing with international origin raw materials, and applying it to a very uniquely Indian material, Mohua. And then what we found is the spirit we were making was really good quality, and people seemed to like it, and so we got into it.
How amazing. So, we know that the Mohua tree supports the livelihood of many tribal pickers, who collect the flowers and the seeds and then they sell them in the market. And this is especially true for the states of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Orissa, and even West Bengal. So tell our listeners more about these Adivasis who trade in Mohua and how it is such an important part of their culture, because so many people in India are really cut off, from the Adivasis of our country, and they don't know what are the kind of, like you said about bureaucracy. I mean, it's this is something that they wouldn't understand, and they wouldn't know what they could do with the produce, because I assume that they would go to the stock market and sell it, where most times I would believe that they would not get the price that they should get for the kind of hard work that goes into collecting the flowers and then taking it, to the main guys who sell it out. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd love to take this on. So, Mahua, the flowers are important to the livelihood of tens of millions of tribal Indians, collectively known as Adivasi. It contributes up to 30% of the annual income of some families. And the Mahua flowering season coincides with the lean agricultural season, so it comes serendipitously at a very good time for them. They use the flowers, to sell them for cash. They barter them for grain, and also they use it to produce alcohol. Now, the Mahua economy is a little unique in the sense that the tribal people collect the flowers during peak Mahua season, which is lean agriculture season. It gets sold at the local heart bazaars and then gets accrued and goes into cold storage where it sits for 4 to 8 months and then makes its way back to the heart bazaars, where the people who have been collecting the flowers then become the buyers during the harvest season, October onwards. And if they sell it, let's say, for example, at 40 rupees in the peak Mahua season, they're buying it back at 80 rupees. So they actually end up spending a lot more for the flowers than they earn from selling the flowers. And that is because the tribal people don't have access to capital in the lean agriculture season. That's why they're forced to sell. Also, there are certain government regulations that prohibit tribal people from keeping flowers within their houses. In many parts of India, the quantity is very strictly regulated. But it is extremely important for livelihood, as well as it has a very significant cultural importance as well. Births, deaths, weddings, everything is celebrated with the distillation of Mahua. There are some tribes that fix an engagement by distilling Mahua. If the Mahua is good, the engagement is finalized. So it is very important that you know the constraints be addressed and this over-regulation be stopped, especially with regard to owning and possessing the flowers.
So, it's very interesting, I mean, to know this from you. And, one only feels sad that, we have access, to so much around us. But, when it comes to alcohol and liquor, it is usually seen that, Indians, especially a whole lot of people, they tend to prefer foreign brands, So India has so much of potential. I mean, I myself, I was totally gobsmacked with the gin market that's there, in India, and they make very good quality Indian gins. So, what are your views on this? Why are people so hung up on on only buying foreign liquor and not being very very proud, and yet there is another part where they talk about handmade in India and sustainability, and so I find this completely, like, it's like two worlds that don't seem to meet together. And what is your view on this? And do you have something to share with our listeners?
If you look at the Indian alcobev industry, it is it contains beverages that are predominantly made based on a spirit known as ENA, or extra neutral alcohol. And the thing with extra neutral alcohol is it's almost 96% ethyl alcohol, and the remaining 4% is water. And that is used as a basis for whiskeys, rums, vodkas, brandies, with just flavor and color added to separate these spirits. So it is based on one spirit and not made in the traditional way. But that is beginning to change. Therefore, in the early days, people preferred to consume foreign alcohols because they were made in the traditional way, whereas today we see transition happening. We see that Indian companies are making alcohols in the traditional way, and that's why the craft industry is emerging. Even though it's very nascent at this moment, it's emerging very nicely.
Conrad, you've been associated with the company for very long, and you and Desmond are planning to take Mohua products to the world. How are you planning on doing this? What are your some of your plans? If you could just share with all of our listeners, because for me, it's extremely interesting to see Indian brands really go out there and be on the shelves when I'm traveling from somewhere, and I would see a brand like that. It's such a it's a pride that one associates with one about being an Indian and being and knowing that you are taking this to the world. So, what are your marketing plans? What have you got, lined up?
Yes. So we were initially thinking that as Agave India, we would take Mahua to the world. And prior to the COVID times, we were trying to raise money for that and had come close to making a deal on that when COVID happened and then everything changed. So during COVID times, we decided to change our whole strategy because we found that the funding issue for this Over to the World project that we had was going to be very difficult. And we thought it would be far more interesting to actually start a company abroad, which I did in the US, which would then, as a default, raise money through what is known as equity crowdfunding. So that is the reason why we started a company called Mohua to the World Inc. Currently, it's a startup and based in the US. We will be raising money for it in the months to come from private investors first and then equity crowdfunding. The relationship between the Mohua to the World Inc. company and the Agave India company is that Agave India will continue to produce bulk super premium Mohua spirit and sell it to the Mohua to the World Inc. entity. And then the MTTW entity, which is Mohua to the World in short, would purchase the liquid bottle package abroad and then sell it outside Indian borders. This way, we would avoid a lot of the hassles involved in what we were going to try to do if we were to do it from Agave, India. So, hope that gives you an idea of what we are planning to do with Power to the World. So,
It's extremely exciting for me. So, you also, Desmond, mentioned to me about Conrad being associated with your company for a very long time and you having mentored him. How did it take for you to convince, a youngster to even believe in? I mean, did he come? Did he know about Mahua when he joined you, or did you have to kind of take him through the whole process? So, just share a little bit because there'll be so many more youngsters who may be wanting to know, what it took for you to mentor him to be part of your big dream of Mohua Liquor.
I was lucky to hire Conrad briefly to do some research work for us when he just graduated from IHM Goa and was going to join the food F&B industry in some capacity, I guess, presumably food. And his father was a friend of mine who had helped me some years earlier to identify the right agave species because he's a really good botanist. Now, when I got to know Conrad, I realized that the guy was really smart and very enterprising and was interested in everything. And then just when we were winding up his assignment, I kind of threw something at him that said, "Hey, listen, why don't you consider joining our company, which is just in the process of launching really interesting Indian-made spirits and liqueurs and other things, which will give you a chance to look at the B side of F&B from a very close standpoint, upfront and personal, because you're joining at a time when we're kind of starting off in the market. And why don't you delay your entry into the food part of it if you find your interest waning in the beverage side?" So he took us on, and then basically I told him that if you show the ability to take on just about any task that you seem to be interested in, we'll give you that opportunity. You'll get a chance to grow with this company in a way that you will not with a large beverage company. And that's how he got involved. And he kept adding, he got involved on the sales side first and then became the master blender very shortly thereafter. Then started showing interest in all the different sides of our company's operations. And when decided to start on the Mohua adventure, I told him that this was an opportunity for him to see something go from concept all the way to the market. So I decided to involve him, and he was really up to the task. He was super interested in everything. He joined me on the R&D part of it. He joined me on trips to the forest. He saw what was going on from a permission standpoint also, and basically had the whole front row view of what happened with Mahua. And then we launched in the Indian market, and then the next step was to look at how to sell it abroad. So I've involved him in just about everything, to the point where he has shown enough capability that we kind of run the company together. So he's risen in just around 10 years or so, from a newbie to a guy who knows more about craft alcohol and heritage alcohol than anybody I know. I would say, even including me.
And how amazing is that? So, Conrad, you can share with us, maybe an incident that you remember when you had just joined in. Did you ever feel that, that this is maybe really a far fetched dream? And did you ever, you were questioning the decision that you took? Or was it all along you were convinced that this is going to be where it is heading today?
I recognized very early on the visionary that Desmond is. He's a very unique individual. I don't think you find too many people like him around in the world. And making Asia's only agave spirits, first of all, a very audacious move. Making it with a company that has, funded itself with private angel investors. Again, something very unique. And when it came to the Mahua project, it has just been a journey of enormous discovery. We knew initially that this was a uniquely Indian spirit distilled in the forest belt of central India. But as we progressed on this journey, we learned of how significant it is to the material and symbolic reality of the Adivasis, how big the industry is, with a very conservative 500 million liters being produced and consumed every year in a hyper-local manner. How the plants, the trees, the Mahua trees grow in India and almost nowhere else in the world. And the fact that it is the only spirit in the world that is distilled from a naturally sweet flower. So it's a category of one. So, in all of this learning, it has been very exciting. And we think that Mahua has the potential of being a national heritage spirit of India with a GI. It should definitely be a regional heritage spirit in the various states, the 13 states uh, that have Mahua trees and where the tribal people do distill and consume Mahua. So I have never once questioned the decision. It is as exciting for me today as it was, 10 years ago. So it's a journey that I have absolutely loved and continue to love.
Yeah, Conrad, there's a question that alcohol forms a part of the tribal way of life. They even consume homemade liquor, and even more liquor is prepared by them. So, what are your views on the usual negative perception that people have of alcohol, and they call it the desi tarra? So, that's the word that's used by a lot of people. And did you ever need to overcome all of these, preconceived notions ever?
We have to acknowledge that this whole temperance movement is part of the nationalist movement. And even though India is the third largest market when it comes to alcohol after China and the USA, we still have a little hypocritical uh, view to alcohol. But I must acknowledge that when it comes to you know tribal culture, it is fairly egalitarian when it comes to drinking. Men and women sit and drink together, and alcohol is interwoven into their culture. It's not about drinking to get drunk. It's part of the culture. So you celebrate with alcohol. You celebrate births, deaths, weddings. If you go to the village market to buy your provisions, there's a separate section that sells alcohol, be it sulfi or chind, which are palm toddies from the fishtail palm and the date palm, respectively, or handia, which is made from rice, or mahua. So you'd see people coming over there, pulling out leaves from their pockets, stitching leaf cups, buying a bottle, and men and women sitting in a circle, just sharing a bottle to quench their thirst and provide them a little bit of refreshment. So it's a really lovely culture. And I think we this negative perception has progressed through 75 years of independence, but I think it's time for change now.
We are doing our bit to help states and state authorities and so on change their regulations about Mahua to make Mahua trade, collection, Mahua liquor also done at some quality level, uh, more easier and not something that is seen as a shameful thing to do, but something that states can be proud of and make even heritage alcohols out of. Madhya Pradesh is the first state to have declared Mahua a state heritage alcohol. We have encouraged the few states we have talked to do that, and we're changing the perception that Mahua is something that is buried and hidden away and should be kept away from people's gaze by making international quality Mahua, conducting events, spreading the word. We're selling our spirit currently in India. People from abroad have tasted it. They keep asking questions about it. How come this has been hidden for so long? How come no one has heard about it if it's so big? So we are in the process of changing people's perceptions through our products. Now we don't have to just talk about it. We can actually have people taste it. And once people taste it, they start spreading the word too. So our Mahua to the World project, it's a little audacious. It's going to be hard work, but we believe the story behind Mahua would be enough to excite people enough to try out the liquid. Because once they try it, then they have a different perception. This is not the thara that people talk about. This is high quality liquid, which is on par with all kinds of international heritage alcohols. One of them, for example, being grappa, which moved from a position of shame in Italy to a position of pride today. Similar paths are being envisaged for Mahua.
And how amazing, Desmond. You really answered that question because we find regulations imposed on alcohol consumption, due to social concerns. And so there are dry states like Bihar and Gujarat. And, this is a choice on alcohol consumption, that should be given instead of enforcing strict rules. And it should definitely be a personal choice for people. So, Desmond, if you could just tell us a little bit about the process of making the Mohua liquor. I mean, how is the cleaning? How is the cleaning and the sampling done? And how do you also arrive at the price point, keeping all these things in mind?
Yeah, the process for us begins with the collection. We believe in clean alcohol coming out of a clean raw material. So for us, hygiene is very important, and we insist on what we call food grade or alcohol grade Mohua, which in the early days we worked with tribal people to provide nets and sheets and all that, and started doing our initial productions with. And this food grade Mohua concept is actually being extended now to foods because there's a whole lot of foods that tribals have made in the past and that could have, market, which Chhattisgarh is currently in the process of demonstrating. So Chhattisgarh has taken on the production of food grade Mahua and is selling it to tribal groups and so on to not selling it, but instead making it available to them to make products out of and selling it in stores in Raipur and other places. And of course, selling us the food grade Mahua to make our international quality Mahua spirit. So for us, we insist on hygiene from collection, which starts with nets and sheets, drying, which is also done with solar dryers and sheets, and then packaging, storing, and then we do a further level of cleaning at our distillery once we bring the sun-dried flowers or the dried flowers over to our distillery in Andhra Pradesh, where we go through these bags and see if there's some residual material that is contaminating it before beginning to ferment it. And essentially, the process involves fermenting sweet flowers with yeast and water. That process takes a few days. At the end of it all, we get the liquid, which has the small percentage of alcohol, maybe 7 to 10%, and then we do multiple distillations to get the high-end spirit that we eventually bottle and sell. So that's how that goes. Yeah, very interesting because when tribals sell Mahua in their hyper-local markets, they sell it at a very, very low price point because it's completely unregulated. There's no taxes they pay on anything. There's no bottling fee. There's no commissions. There's no. I mean, they sell it in whatever containers are available. Typically, second-use plastic bottles, and so on. So they are able to sell their liquid, which is typically at between 10 to 15% strength alcohol, maybe sometimes up to 20, at a very low price. Now, when we try to look at what our economics are, we start off with that entire, the process of buying and paying taxes on flowers, transporting them, going through these processes of cleaning and so on and so forth, and then going through the sort of craft process of making the alcohol and then shipping that alcohol to a place where it gets bottled. Everywhere there are taxes, costs, and so on that add up. That will not be something that any tribal producer will have to face. Then there is the state level stuff after you've got finished product where there are taxes on that before you sell it. I mean, a bottle of, to give you an example of the craziness of taxes, I mean, a bottle of anything that costs, say, 1,000 rupees in Goa retail price would cost something like 2,500 in a state like Karnataka or 3,000 in a state like Bombay, with the manufacturers getting none of that difference in price. So these are state level and other kinds of taxes that get added on. So a bottle of liquor that might cost, say, 500 rupees to produce is being sold at 3,000 rupees, and with the manufacturer getting just a small fraction of that 3,000 rupees. So we make about the same amount of money as tribals do, if, eventually, if at all. And that is kind of interesting. And we have to also explain that our alcohol is at 40%, which is about 2 to 3 times the strength at which they make and sell it. So it ends up with it being a bit of a wash from my standpoint. Conrad might have a different angle on it, but
So, Desmond, I would really like to, delve back with you into your first alcohol experience. I mean, did you ever imagine that you would be doing this? And, I'd heard about you about maybe 7, 8 years back, from the late Ram Ray, with whom I'd worked in Kolkata. And he connected us, on Facebook. But I remember he speaking so highly of you. And he said, you must talk to Desmond. And, he's doing something very interesting. So, what's your first memory of alcohol, Desmond?
I gave a clue to that. I had been searching back in my now rapidly fading memory bank, and prior to giving a TEDx talk on crafting a national spirit, and I talked a little bit about what my earliest memories of alcohol production were, and they were probably at about age 6 or 7 when I was in a suburb of Bombay called Malad, in a village-like setting back then called Orlan, and our neighbor used to collect toddy and produce alcohol. So there was a smell of alcohol that suffused the air back then, and it was something that was all hush hush and would happen at night. It had an air of mystery to it, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, that stuck around in my memory, but I would say that that's my earliest childhood memory of alcohol. I, other than things like mass wine or sipping the occasional beer from a indulgent aunt or uncle. But yeah, the idea of making something out of raw material like that at that time coconut sap or toddy as they called it, was a different palm tree, was my earliest memory.
So, well, for me, I had a boyfriend who had given me a bottle of Mohua. This is in 1994, I think, 94, yeah, or 95. He had traveled into Madhya Pradesh and he had got me a bottle of Mohua. And that is when, I saw it for the first time. So, thank you so much, Desmond and Conrad, for being on today's episode. And, just for some of our listeners, I just want to share that in Swahili, Mohua means a flower, and for the Gond people, they revere the Mohua tree as the tree of life. In fact, the Gond people from around the central Indian plateau of Chotanagar have revered the Mohua tree as a tree of life for centuries. According to Gond mythology, the Mohua flower is a divine entity believed to never dry up ever. So, thank you so much for being on today's episode, and I look forward to the Mohua being a permanent fixture in my bar, and wishing you all the best for taking this, to an international level. And it gives me tremendous joy.
It's a pleasure to be on your show, and it's a special pleasure to be having a conversation with what is revered by tribals. So, about such a topic with a person named Mohua, it's like a thrill.
Yes.
Conrad, you can say what you like.
Yes, Conrad.
And saying bye.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to be on your show.
Thank you so much, Conrad. Wish you all the best. And for all our listeners, please check out the Mohua story on the Mohua Show. Thank you so much. To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are the Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.